The Burnout franchise is one that, while not as large as something like Need for Speed or even Midnight Club, contains some of the most entertaining and unique racing titles of the 6th generation of gaming consoles. Today, we'll be talking about what I consider to be the magnum opus of the series, Burnout 3 Takedown. The Burnout series began in 2001 and was developed by Criterion Games on their very own renderware engine. Burnout helped to show off the capabilities of its engine with detailed environments, a solid 60 FPS frame rate, and above all else, detailed crash physics, which really helped the game stand out amongst the other arcade racing rivals. Criterion then followed that up with Burnout 2 Point of Impact a year later, and improved the game further by adding a dedicated crash mode to let players cause vehicular carnage on a new level, as well as a pursuit mode where you chased down other racers and took them out to unlock their cars. Unlike most of the racing game sequels we've covered on this channel, the development for Burnout 2 sequel didn't begin right after its launch. The popularity of the Burnout series had caught the eye of publisher EA, who wanted to work with Criterion Games to revive their old Skate or Die franchise to compete with the then popular Tony Hawk series of games. However, development was always interrupted and meddled with by EA, which really upset the studio to the point where they had enough and refused to work on that game any further. This nearly ended the early relationship between EA and Criterion, if it weren't for E3 2003, when the then executive vice president of EA, Bruce McMillan, approached studio head Alex Ward to make him an offer he actually did refuse at first. EA wanted to make amends, and even offered Criterion the chance to make whatever game it wanted to, including a new Burnout game. Ward refused at first, as they felt like the only way to make the next big leap would be to wait for a next generation of hardware. That is, until someone at EA told him that they got lucky with Burnout. If you were doing that again, you'd be screwed. And with that, Ward and the entire team at Criterion became incredibly motivated to prove EA just how wrong they were. Part of this deal, however, was that EA was to leave Criterion to the game development and not interfere with them at all. Surprisingly though, EA agreed to those terms, and Criterion had what they considered a near-complete game 6 months later. And by July of 2004, EA had fully acquired Criterion Games, and by September of that year, Burnout 3 Takedown was released for the PlayStation 2 and original Xbox. Burnout 3 was my first introduction to the franchise, and it left quite an impression on a kid who had only played Need for Speed Underground and Gran Turismo 3 up to that point in time. I first played the game during a sleepover at my cousin's house, and it quickly became the only game I could think about. The insane sense of speed while racing around the world, the level of detail in both the environment and the crash physics had us all in awe. We took turns battling one another for hours in race mode, and spent even more time trying to get higher and higher scores in crash mode. While I never got the hang of the handling physics as a kid enough to progress too far into the game, today, I had an absolute blast chaining drifts together on long, winding roads. While I do sometimes struggle to navigate the tighter corners at higher speeds, the fact that I could defend my position by simply ramming into other drivers counteracts my lack of skill. This core gameplay loop of Burnout 3 is so deceptively simple, yet highly refined and incredibly addicting. Before we jump into what makes this game so much fun, be sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. If I could summarize the fun and draw of Burnout 3 for someone in a short phrase, it would be non-stop action. Burnout 2 pushed the series by adding a crash mode for players to wreak havoc upon the world around them, and with Takedown, Criterion must have imagined what that game would play like if the action of crash mode appeared everywhere in the game. While Takedown is a part of the game's title, it's also the core mechanic in the gameplay loop, as you'll be battling your opponents and taking them down during races to maximize your boost meter and crush your competition. How you dispose of your rivals is up to you. Psych outs, wall takedowns, and even signature takedowns are all on the table and an effective way to keep your boost gauge full. Just be careful, because your opponents can easily return the favor to you too, and take you and your boost gauge back down to zero. However, when you're taken down in an accident, you'll find another way to cause chaos with the new Aftertouch feature. This lets you control your wreck for a few seconds in the hope of steering into the racing line to take down your opponent. Beyond being ultra satisfying, it also makes you less likely to restart a race after an accident, since a successful Aftertouch takedown will give you some much needed boost. It reminds me a lot of Midnight Club's barrierless racetracks, as even getting pushed wide doesn't necessarily mean a ruined race. Burnout 3 has two different modes for you to crash your way to victory in: Race Mode and Crash Mode. Race Mode sounds the most generic from its title alone, as it's where you'll find various events like your standard circuit and sprint races, Grand Prix for tournaments, face-off events, and road rage. Road Rage is a standout amongst the more traditional races, as it's a timed event for you to take down as many opponents as you can before either the time runs out or your luck runs out. During my playthrough, it was my favorite mode to race in, as it's solely focused on the new takedown mechanic, and I always find myself trying to line up my takedowns to hit the signature ones often, like the Pillar Driller or Gone Fishing. That's not to say circuit or sprint races are any less thrilling. Takedowns are still a regular occurrence, and your opponents get even more aggressive in their battles against you for first place. The only downside I found is once you start to build a lead over your rivals, you don't really get as many opportunities to perform takedowns and earn boost. Crash mode, on the other hand, is built from the ground up to keep you in the middle of the wreckage. Originating from Burnout 2, the team at Criterion carried it over to Takedown and utilized that new aftertouch system to great effect here. In Burnout 2, Crash mode was more of a watch the wreckage unfold type of game mode, where your input ended after driving straight into traffic. Here in Burnout 3 though, Criterion added a lot more fun, and it all starts with aftertouch. You still get to control how your wreck moves just like in race mode, but now you have the added effect of the crash breaker to give you that little extra push and even more potential points. Beyond flying into traffic, you also have markers to help you reach high scores too, with a 2x and 4x point multiplier, cash bonuses, and extra crash breakers for even more explosions. This was the game mode that had my cousins and me absolutely hooked on Burnout 3. We cheered with each crash breaker that sent our cars flying into a sky in a fiery blaze of glory, and we challenged each other to go higher and higher on our scores. Outside of both of these modes being tons of fun, your takedowns during races and the cash from crash mode also help you progress forward in the game. With each takedown and dollar you earn, more vehicles and classes are unlocked alongside new events within the US, Europe, and East Asia. Going back to the cars for a moment, all the vehicles in the Burnout series are unlicensed because, well, I don't think too many manufacturers would like to see their cars flying hundreds of feet into the air after driving headfirst into a tanker truck. All jokes aside though, I thoroughly enjoy each of these original creations. Burnout features a pretty diverse cast of cars to choose from, with series being compacts, muscles, coupes, sports, supers, specials, and even heavyweights to choose from. Although they're all unlicensed, I love inspecting each car to look for design cues that the team may have drawn some real-world inspiration from. Like how the Muscle Type 2 and Assassin Muscle have front lights and C-pillars reminiscent of the R32 GTR, yet it has the aggressive rear end similar to the S197 Mustang. It's the same fun I have when I play Grand Theft Auto and try to match its made-up manufacturers to the actual car. At least it's fun for a specific nerd like me. The one downside to this roster is that you're limited to racing with a specific series of cars within an event. Although that probably works out for the best, as you probably wouldn't want the opponents to have access to the heavyweight trucks while you're in a lightweight supercar. Alongside using unlicensed cars, the one thing that may disappoint you is that unlike a lot of popular racing games of the time, Burnout 3 lacks any real customization beyond changing body colors. For me, this isn't too big of a deal, since Burnout plays more like a genuine arcade cabinet arcade racing game than something like Underground 2 did. But I am still disappointed with how limited your color choices are. Most models are limited to black, red, and blue, so even when you're racing in different cars, it feels a bit samey. At the very least, I think having a color wheel to choose from would have added a bit more variety in the color palette in the grid. Although I will give Criterion bonus points. Each car's livery has unlicensed and unique sponsor decals, including my favorite of Miso, which is inspired by the old Nismo logo. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 popularized the use of licensed music within EA's racing games, and since then, we've been given some absolutely incredible soundtracks. Burnout 3 Takedown is of course no exception to this, as it's full to the brim with tons of rock, punk, alt-rock, and so much more. Usually I like to use instrumentals of my favorite songs for background music, but to avoid any copyright issues or limitations, you'll just have to load up a playlist of Burnout 3's music in the background. And you'll definitely want to, because the genres of music fit the grungy, destructive, and rebellious racing that Burnout provides to create one of the best atmospheres to race in. There's something so incredibly fun when you're jamming out to artists like Rise Against and Yellowcard while sending your opponents flying off the side of a cliff. I think the only game that comes close for me personally may be Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition, because it's another game where the music and gameplay blend so seamlessly together while racing. Adding to your fast-paced, rock-fueled wreckfest is DJ Striker, our in-game DJ and guide to the world of Takedown.
Hello my friends, I'm Striker on CrashFM, and I've just heard that the cars are clearing 160 on the run through Main Street.
You'll find DJ Striker introducing you to each mode for the first time, and then periodically checking in during your racing action. I love the addition of DJs like this in racing games, as it helps add more immersion, with DJ Striker being a real-world DJ from LA. He provides some fantastic commentary while racing and in the menus that really make it so much more interesting. Need for Speed Pro Street, a game I plan on covering in the future, also does a great job of this too, with having various real-world announcers at its events as well. It's all these small details that pile on top of one another to give Burnout 3 its immaculate vibes that modern games can only dream of achieving. Burnout 3 Takedown was a sequel that shouldn't have existed, yet was created out of a desire to prove its publisher wrong, and will go on to be critically and socially beloved upon its release. Whether you played it back in 2004, or you're thinking of trying it out for the first time in 2025, you'll find it just as thrilling and addictive to play as ever. From the diverse and fully unique car roster, to the beautifully designed tracks across the globe, you'll find a lot to love while going on a takedown rampage against your opponent. Those tracks are made to look even more beautiful when you play it through an emulator like I did this time around. It also unlocks a full 60 FPS for the game, which was surprisingly not achieved on the PS2 despite Criterion having done so for the previous titles. This was a compromise Alex Ward had to begrudgingly make during development due to how complex the game had become. Without many changes to the emulator settings, I keep getting more and more impressed by these PS2 games running on PCSX2, and I think I'll keep using it for my future retrospective games. Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments below. Burnout 3's success ensured that EA would add it as a cog in their production machine. Despite the release of new games shortly after Burnout 3 in 2005, including Revenge for the PS2, PS3, and Xbox 360, as well as Legends for the PSP, Criterion Studios did not release another game until Burnout Paradise in 2008, which would be their final title. While Paradise may have marked the end of the Burnout franchise, Criterion themselves would go on to achieve remarkable success in developing for the Need for Speed and Battlefield franchises in the future. However, for this gamer turned YouTuber, Burnout 3 will always remain the shining jewel in the center of Criterion's development crown. A racing game made to spike the suits at one of the biggest publishing companies on Earth, and one which was made with the idea of fun kept first and foremost. If you haven't played Burnout 3 Takedown before, it's a game I highly recommend, as it's very easy to pick up and play. But be careful, because you won't want to put it down. Similar to Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2, Burnout 3 Takedown is just one of those games that'll most likely never be made again. As for the group who played it back in the day like me, it might be time to dust off your old copy and give it another playthrough for old time's sake. Let me know your thoughts on Burnout 3 in the comments below. I always love hearing your stories with these games too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.